So as I mentioned before about APIA, it's a bunch of conservative foundation regarding gathering together to connect for the people who love pollinator and bees and want to raise awareness about pollinator protection as well as sharing knowledge and resource internationally. And we have in the past time we have an event offline and online since March 2019 in Chiang Rai, and in the beginning of this year we start APIA online webinar since the COVID situation is still going on, and right now it's, it's the sixth webinar that we have set for this year. And again, you can follow or subscribe our group from the Facebook group, APIA Facebook group, via this link and QR code. And right now, I want to send to Kun Vichun Banyakun to introduce his unit a bit.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chulata, for the introduction. I'll be very brief. GreenNet, it's a social enterprise which we founded almost 30 years ago in 1993. We basically working on two main areas. One is organic farming, and the other is on the fair trade. We have GreenNet Cooperative. Actually, the chart will say GreenNet Foundation, but it's not correct. We are cooperative. The majority of our members are producers. And we also have a non-profit foundation, which is the EarthNet Foundation, which is established 7 years later. We work as a collaborative sister organization where the EarthNet Foundation is more on the technical side and the co-op is more on the business side, basically. We work with quite a number of producers group from Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai area down to the southern part of Thailand in Pattani, Yala, right across the country. And we actually have over 1,500 producers, families as a member of the co-op, where we not just support them to produce organically, but we also help them to organize their supply chain for market access to different countries, including export to Europe. We also work a little bit in South Asia as a consultant for organic projects. Currently, we have some project going on in Laos, PDR, and probably in Myanmar. If you want to learn more about us, you can check our website at greennet.or.th. And those people who are in Thailand probably love the Facebook, so you can follow us on the Facebook at GreenNet Organic. Thank you very much and enjoy the presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be able to welcome Natapot Warrit today. I've got to hear about Natapot some time ago, and in APIA, we're trying to develop knowledge and work on conservation of all types of pollinators and restoration of pollinators. And we've had the chance to learn quite a bit in different previous lectures and with different engagements on different native apis bees and also on stingless bees, and then most recently with Dr. Alyssa Stewart on bat pollinators. But we haven't yet had a chance to really get to explore all of the amazing non-apis bees. And so this is really a great chance to learn more about these bees and their habitat and their need and their role. Dr. Natapot has been working with non-apis bees since his PhD research. And now he's been working, I'll tell more about it, on a database for bees of Thailand. And also like to give a big thanks to Nontawat Chatanabun, the PhD student from entomology working with Dr. Natapot, and he's providing the interpretation. So if you didn't see ถ้าคนไม่รู้ก็ถ้าจะอยากแปลเป็นภาษาไทยก็ ก็กดข้างล่างจะมี option เลือกภาษาไทยอยู่แล้วก็คุณนนทวัฒน์ก็จะแปลเป็นภาษาไทยอยู่ครับ So I'll be helping to facilitate questions as we get to the end of the session, and I thank you so much and welcome Dr. Natapot Warrit.
Can everyone see the screen right now that I'm sharing?
Looks good
Michael?
here. Yeah,
okay.
looking good, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael, for a very kind introduction. My name is Natapot Warrit from the Department of Biology, Chulalongkorn University. And the title of my talk today is going to be the Forgotten Thai Pollinator, the solitary bees responsible for the future of Thailand terrestrial ecosystem. Yes, this is quite a pretty long title for the talk, but I was hoping that by the end of this talk, I have convinced some of you, maybe most of you, about how important the solitary bees are and how they are gonna help us maintain the ecosystems in Thailand and everywhere else. Okay, so before we started, I would like to tell you to look at this picture. Actually, this is a pretty nice picture taken by one of my former students. Groups of bees are trying to get pollen from sun hemp or bò thương. Okay, a lot of you here might recognize that the bee in the middle is the honeybees, Apis mellifera. But however, in this picture, there is not only just honeybees. There are some other bees, such as stingless bees, the Tetragonella laviceps, and the leaf cutter bees, Megachile laticeps, which trying to gather the pollens and put the pollens on the undersides of its abdomen. Well, I'm showing you this picture just to give you a glimpse of in nature, there's not only just honeybees, there are other kinds of bees too. There are diversity of bees that we can find in nature. Well, despite the diversity of bees, let's start it with something about what are bees, okay? Bees are insects. They are arthropods, and they are classified into a groups of Hymenoptera, which is called the Aculeata or the stinging wasps. Okay, stinging wasps includes, well, wasps, parasitic wasps, ants, and also bee as well. So in this picture here, the aculeates, if we focus just one group down here, we call this group bees or Anthophila. What's the difference that make bees different from others, aculeates, other wasps? Well, one of the major character change or evolution is the hair of bees. Bees has a hair that we call it plumose hair or feathery hair, okay? This hair is used to collect pollens, which is their main protein diets. So beside of eating, I mean, they do not eat meat like wasps, so they eat just only pollens and use pollen to feed their young. I just like to call it the veggie wasp. So as you can see here, they share a common ancestor with the predatory wasps, but they prefer to eat plant instead, which is the pollen. Okay, so there are many bees in the world. You might heard a lot about this, but how many are there? Okay, currently scientists summarize that more than 20,000 species of bees are distributed around the world. And if you look into this picture, it's pretty clear that there are diversity of bees in terms of color, in terms of shapes, in terms of their functional traits that is important to their ecology. Of this 20,000 bees, only 500 are social, which what we know from honeybees and stingless bees, that, okay, these bees are bees that have caste system, they have queens, they have workers that do everything in the cells, they have males who doesn't do anything, hanging around and trying to mate with the queen, that's all. But that's accounted for less than 1% of the total bee diversity in the world, because the rest are solitary, okay? And I say solitary in a quotation mark because some of these, they are not truly solitary, because some of them will have daughter living in the same cell as the mother, okay? But they do not have caste system like the honeybee do. Well, with the current knowledge, we can classify bees into 7 different families: the melitids, apids, megachilids, andrinid, halictid, stenotritid, and the colidides. And of these 7 families, you can classify them into 2 large groups: the long tongue and the short tongue bees. Okay, I'm not going to go into depth about what is long tongue and the short tongue bees. It's more of a taxonomy relevant. And if you have any questions, you can ask me later about this. But if we look at the biogeography of bees in the world, you can see that bees can be found in every continent except Antarctica, the current Antarctica right now. In Asia, there are more than 6,000 species of bees described. And of these, more than 1,000 species can be found in Southeast Asia. I'm saying 1,000 species, which is actually an understatement, because not a lot of work has been done in the area of Southeast Asia or Oriental area as a whole. Well, most of you know what a honeybee is and what a honeybee looks like. The honeybees belong to the genus Apis, and there are currently 9 or 10 species of honeybees in the world, depending on which taxonomist that you're talking to, okay? But for Thailand, we have quite a number of honeybee species. We have Apis florea, which is Phung Mim. We have Apis androniformis, Phung Man, Apis dorsata, Phung Luang, Apis rana, Phung Prong, Apis mellifera, Phung Pan, or the bees that everybody knows in Thailand, that we use them for producing honey, producing royal jelly, propolis, and other honeybee related product. Okay, well, there's 5 species of honeybees in Thailand. What about other species? Well, if you go into a website called discoverlife.org, the sections on bees, if you can see here, is monitored and updated regularly by one of my good friends and collaborator, Dr. John Asher of the National University of Singapore and American Museum of Natural History in New York. He has revised or has looked into most bee publication since 1758, the starting of the binomial systems until now, and has summarized how many species or how many named species of bees are there in the world. So he did quite a lot of literature review. I mean, not quite a lot. I think he has done the most comprehensive literature review of bees in the world, and find out that in Thailand, currently we have more than 240 plus species names of bees in Thailand. Okay, I'm emphasizing this as a name Okay, we're not talking about the actual species that we can find in the wild. There could be much more. It could double this number if we did some more of a research work on it. So, but why do we have to care about all of these different bees, the solitary bees that are not the honeybees? Well, the answers lies within a publication of a book in 1996 by Dr. Steve Buckman and Gary Knappen. The title is The Forgotten Pollinator. Okay, this is the one of the foremost books that's trying to stimulate or make awareness to the public that we have to care about other pollinator beside of just honeybees. The excerpts from the books explain something like, consider this: without interaction between animal and flowering plant, the seed and fruit that make up nearly 80% of human diet would not exist. So you can see here that the interaction between animal and flowering plant are essential for human survivability. Okay, well, what are these animals? The vital but little appreciated relationship between plant and the animal they depend on for reproduction, including bees, beetles, butterflies, hummingbird, moth, bat, and countless other animals, are some widely recognized and other almost unknown. I would like to emphasize the phrase here, other almost unknown, which is very relevant to the solitary bees, because these are something that public is not very aware of, and how important they are to our ecosystem. And this is why I give the title of my talk today as the Forgotten Thai Pollinator. Okay. So today's talk is going to be about solitary bees. Okay, as you can see here in this picture, they come in different shapes, size, and color. Okay, and if you want to know what's the difference between the solitary bees and honeybees or other stingless bee, which has social lifestyles, first, solitary lifestyle, in this case, I'm giving a presentation of an example in a raisin bee. The scientific name is Chalicodoma disjuncta. These bee, female, when they eclose from their nest, the first thing of what they do is trying to mate with the male. And then later, they'll be trying to find a nest. Okay, so in this case, maybe a bamboo nest, okay? And then they would go out and find substrate that can be used for their nest, such as raisin, such as mud, and then come back to the nest and then construct the nest using all of the materials that they can gather, deposit a pollen ball for their young, and then lay in eggs and let the eggs develop inside. And then this cycle goes on and on and on and on. As you can see here, there's no queen, there's no drone. Well, they have a drone, they have a male, but they don't have a caste or worker specialization individual that do all the works. The bees lay the eggs and they have to do all of their work. So this is the solitary lifestyle. Well, where can we find solitary bees? Solitary bees can be found in many places. Underground, like this little Martian on the left upper corner. Under the ground, you can find it on the cliff. You can find it inside of a plant stem. You can find it in a tree, or in artificial nests, or in human artifacts, like even in buildings. And you can also find it in a snail shell as well. So there are a lot of places that bees can use to construct their nest. But most of the time, there are nests restricted in terms of their preference. They can, if they nest in the tree, that's mean they will not nest in the ground. So it's very species or group specifics. Well, to show you the impact of solitary bees on our economics, which is some of the topic that a lot of people likes to know, whether the bees are good for our lives or making us money. One of the best example that has been around for a long time is on the pollination of an alfalfa seeds by bees called Megachile rotundata. Okay, alfalfa is a crop plant that is huge in North America and in Europe and in China in terms of that this is a foliage crop plant that can be used to make hay and feed it to cattle and all of the livestock animal. So it's very important. Megachile rotundata actually originated in Europe, but was first introduced into North America during the mid-1930s. And then later, in 2004, there's an estimation that in North America, 2/3 of world production of alfalfa is due to the help of the leaf cutter bees, which is sum into amount of more than 10.5 billion US dollar. So this is in 2004, okay? So the reason that why Megachile rotundata is efficient in pollinating alfalfa is that if you look into this video on the right-hand bottom corner here, okay, you can see a flower of alfalfa. It has what is called keel petal. So this keel petal hides the stamen, which has the pollens at the tip of the stamen here. So what works here, how the flower works here is that if you touch the keel, it will bounce the stamen up and look like this. So you will get a chance to get the pollens. For Megachile rotundata, if you look into this picture, it will touch the keel and the keel will shoot up and then it can collect the pollen. So Megachiles are very efficient. Comparing to honeybees, especially older workers, they don't like getting the keel petals snapped at. So they go around and then trying to not collecting the pollens, but collecting only the nectar. So in this case, this is why honeybees are not very efficient pollinator for alfalfa. Okay. Well, beside of the example on economic value of solitary bees, what we are really concerned about is that solitary bees are very important to the conservation of our ecosystems. Okay, we need solitary bees that can help us maintain plants that sustain our terrestrial ecosystems. One of the examples in Thailand that I'm giving up here by Mr. Simung and others in 2013 is that the orchids named Syrintonia monophylla or the Ương Syrinton are a very small flower orchids, and they can only be pollinated by groups of small carpenter bees in genus Ceratina. Okay, because the flowers of these orchids are very small, only small and tiny bees, this is not more than 1 or 1.5 centimeters, can go inside and then bring the pollinarium or the pollens of the bees, of the flowers to come out from the one flower to pollinate another flowers. As you can see here in picture DNE, okay, the pollens or the pollinarium of the flowers can only be attached to the sides of the bee face, and these pollens will go out and then brush with other flower. Okay, so unfortunately, there are not a lot of ecological studies about solitary bees and in Thailand. One or a few that is noteworthy, and it's a very good studies looking at the relation between this solitary bees and agricultural area by Tangtaw Wongsakul in 2017. Okay, so this work was carried out in central Thailand near Bangkok, and they want to look at the relationship between the mango orchards, plantation, and the solitary bees. It's interesting to note that in this picture, especially C graph here and D graph here, if you see here that if the monocultural area is extended, or if it's have a very extensive area, you can see that the richness and the abundance of solitary bees are reducing. So the size of a monocultural area can have a negative effects on the richness and the abundance of the solitary bees. On the other hand, if you look at the flowering plant diversity, if it increases, the richness and the abundance is increasing. Another ecological example, which is very cool here, is that a work by Stewart et al. In 2015, looking at all the green area in Bangkok vicinity. Okay, you know that we have quite a number of parks in Bangkok, and these green area has various size, has various different types of plant that the pollinator can live in. What they found is that if the green area, the more we provide green area into parks in urban area, the more pollinator richness and abundance can be found throughout. And with the more area of green area, if you put more flowers into the area, then you will get a lot of pollinator in the area. Okay, so the two examples that I've given to you is not really in a natural setting, because we are in Thailand are not aware about the ecological significance of bee pollinator in our natural habitat setting. This is a work that I'm currently working with my students, Mr. Thiradet, to look at the relationship between natural habitat and the solitary bee pollinator. So at Doi Intanon National Park, which everybody or most of people know here, it has the highest mountain peaks of Thailand, which is about 2,600 meters from sea level. At various sites, we're trying to look at bee compositions and look at the plant host that has bee coming to visit. At our current research, we found that there are more than 55 taxa of bees from 3 different families in Doi Intanon Forest, which visited more than 45 taxa of plant from 26 family. As you can see here that there are quite a number of species of bees and plants that are interacting in this area. So I was hoping that by the end of this year, we're going to have some more interesting data to show you with what elevation has different kinds of plants and assemblage of bee. So stay tuned if you are interested in this kind of work. So what has been hindering the ecological studies on the importance of solitary bees in Thailand for a long time is that, well, we were not really sure the basic questions of how many species of bees are there in the country. I mean, this is like the most basic questions, and we can still not answer this questions accurately. We don't know where they are, we don't know what they are and how they distribute. If we're going to conserve the pollination systems in our Thailand ecosystems, we need to at least find the answer to how many are there and where they are. Okay, so Gonzalez and Engels in 2012 say that the Southeast Asian bees fauna is particularly diverse, but simultaneously poorly documented, underrepresented in collection, and with many species largely confused. So this is a big problem right now. I mean, we don't know a lot about our bees. And another important thing is we are losing people who can study them as well. Like in this editorial piece by Orr 2020, which just said that, well, how can we name species before they go extinct when taxonomists are also a threatened species? Well, here is some of the problem that we are currently facing. Well, here, I was just going to go through some of our taxonomic work and natural history work about bees in Thailand that I have been working on for the past 10 years. We're trying to go out in the field and collect bees and trying to describe and to study their diversity as much as possible. These are a little bit of snippet of our research publication that's we've been recently kicked it out from our labs to the public. Also, on this next sessions, I would like to talk more about the bees in Thailand in general. Okay, so the first group is the Amygdala. So we know this bee as the blue banded bees or Phung Si Fa. Okay, Amygdala is a very common bees that you can find even in parks or in national park or in natural habitat setting. These are fast flying bees with a very long tongue to collect nectar from the flower corolla. Megachile has a very unusual, well, I can say not unusual, but specialized modes of pollination. It can vibrate their abdomen to the anther of a flower to make the flower release more pollens coming out to them to collect. Okay, Amygdala live or make their nest under the ground, as you can see from the picture that I showed you previously. In Thailand, we know that there are two subgenera of Amygdala, the Sonomygdala and the Glossomygdala. Both of them can be easily distinguished by the color and the pattern of the abdomens. One has an iridescent stripes, and another one doesn't have the stripe, but have a solid black abdomen with sometimes with white hair bands. In Thailand, the Glossomygdala has been studied by us in 2012, and we note about their important character that we can use to distinguish them from others in the same subgenera. But what's more important is that the Sonomygdala, we can classify them into more than 9 morphospecies, and they are very look alike. This is our ongoing work that we still don't know how to put the name into these different types of Sonomygdala, because one of the biggest problem is that we cannot see the types of the bees and trying to assign the names to these bees. So in the future, I'm hoping that I or maybe my students will be able to solve the problem of this in Thailand. Another group of interesting bees is the Ceratina, or the small carpenter bees. This one is in the subgenus Ceratinidia. This is a very common bee. Oops, sorry. Okay, they are small, not more than 1.5 centimeter in length. They can be found in a lot of diverse habitat throughout Thailand. Okay, it has a yellow marking stripe on its black body. But why do we call them small carpenter bee? Is that they nest inside a twig or a dried stem that sometimes has a pith inside. So what they do is that they excavate the pits of the stems of the plants and then partition cells inside the stems of the plants to raise their young, lay their eggs, and then when the young mature, the youngs go out and then mate with other males. In Thailand, there are more than 10 species of Ceratina or Ceratinidia in the country. And this is a work from 2012. Right now in our collections, I believe we have maybe a couple of more new species that needs to be described. We need some people to help us with that. Another group of Ceratina bees that currently has been discovered by one of my students is from another subgenus called Xanthoceratina. This is also carpenter bee as well, but they are different from Ceratinidia in terms of the color on the abdomens and the bands. As you can see here, the correlations on the abdomens is different, and the marking on the face of the females are very different. Okay, another group that we are interested in is the large carpenter bees of the genus Xylocopa. This is what we call in Thai Malang Pu. Okay, Malang Pu or Xylocopa constitute the largest species of bees that we can find in Thailand. One of the species is Xylocopa laticeps. Okay, can reach almost about an inches or more, and they love to construct their nest in a dead plant or dead tree. They excavate. They have a very powerful mandibles that can excavate the dead trees and make nests inside. Okay. I'm showing you here some of our studies back in 2014 that we studied the nest architecture of a Xylocopa called Xylocopa nasalis. Xylocopa nasalis is very interesting because the story here is that while we are traveling collecting bees around Thailand, we stopped in Radbury and saw this makeshift roof that made from bamboo. And then when we look closely into it, we can see that these bamboos has a bee sticking its heads out, okay, and flying in and flying out. So we found that, okay, these bees make their nests in a bamboo. This is interesting. How are we going to study them? Well, we asked the owner of the restaurant, and they were kindly tell us to tear their roof apart willingly because they're going to tear it down anyway. And what we found is very interesting because we can observe the behavior in front of the nest here. And then when we split up the nest, we found that, well, the carpenter bees of the species Xylocopa nasalis, they make their nest inside a bamboo clump, and they use the bamboo excavations to make the partitions of the cells inside, and then they lay their pollens and eggs in it. As you can see here in this picture, the oldest offspring is in the innermost of the cells, while the youngest is almost at the entrance. Okay. So when we study more about this bee nesting behavior, we're trying to look at their diet as well, because we want to know as well what were they collecting and what were they maybe pollinating. So an analysis using a traditional acetylysis methods revealed that these bees can visit more than 29 pollen types and then bring those pollens back to their cells to feed the young. So this is like quite a lot of number of species of plant in their area that the bees are visiting. Okay, in this 29 pollen types, we can categorize it into 13 major pollen types and 16 minor pollen types. What's interesting more is that the major pollen types are the endemic plant species in the area, including Castanopsis and Lithocarpus, which is a plant in the family of what we call it gaw. And also they collect a lot from Senna cymea, which is the cassia plant or the killick in their area. Okay, so beside of our work on natural history or on pollen compositions of plant that they collect, we also study Psilocopa in other species. Like this in picture is Psilocopa estuans, which they made their nest inside dead woods. And when I say dead wood, it is a really huge dead woods. Okay, you can find a dead woods, big ones. And in this studies, what we did is that we bring the woods back to our lab, and then I contact some of my friends at the Faculty of Medicines, and we try to look at how they construct their nest inside the dead wood using X-ray technique. So as you can see here, there's not a lot or not much to decipher from the work about the structure of this bee nesting architecture. But after we changing our methods from X-ray to CT scan, we found that the bees are actually has 2 tiers of nests inside the woods. So which means these bees can make an upper layer systems and lower layer systems, and they can walk across in different tunnel system in their colony. So this is a pretty interesting studies that we found out. Another group of bees is the bees in genus Rantidiellum. Okay, so in this genus of bees, these bees called raisin bees. And the reason that they call it a raisin bee is because they collect plant raisins and use the plant raisin to construct their nests. If you look at the picture on the right-hand side on the upper corner, those are their nests. And they use raisin, plant raisin, to make their nests. Currently, we are also looking at the pollen that these bees are using in their diet as well. But we approach in a very different technique using what we call meta barcoding, which is that we sample the pollens and then look at the DNA of the pollens, and then to see what's constitute in the pollen that these bees are using it. Okay, so these are our ongoing research that we are doing right now with the meta barcodings to see what's plant they are pollinating or visiting. These methods of meta barcoding and traditional pollination studies methods can really help us understanding a lot more about the plant diets in these bees and maybe in other bees in Thailand as well. Okay. So let me switch gear and change a little bit of topics beside of taxonomy here. I think not a lot of people here wants to know about taxonomy of bees, but what is more interesting is that here, I hope, or I bet that a lot of people in this audience knows about the pollinator crisis. Either it's from news, from social media, from other kind of social media platform, okay, that a lot of people saying that pollinator are declining throughout the world, right? We are having a pollinator crisis. Okay, so number of species of pollinator are declining. And then we got this work from Bartolomew's in 2018 showing that, well, for bees, there are some declining of bees in North America and in Brazil. There are some declining of flies in Europe, especially in England. There's some declining of butterfly population also in England, in the Netherlands, in Germany. Well, I mean, how did scientists get all of this data from? Okay, the big questions, and the most important question is that they can answer these kinds of questions because they have historical collection. Okay, they have collections of bees from past and to the present that they can infer whether there's a declining or there's an increasing of pollinator in that given area. If you look in this picture here, especially bees, on the picture on the right-hand top corner, you can see here that Thailand is white. White doesn't mean that there's no declining or there's or status quo of pollinator in Thailand, but there is not enough data to assess what's the current state of pollinator are in Thailand. So to tackle this kind of problem, as I stated earlier, we need a solid bee collection that help us understand our diversity, monitor our current bee population in our country to see whether they are declining, whether they are increasing, and what are the factors that contribute to those effects. Okay, so at Chulalongkorn University, we house specimens of bees in Thailand, over 15,000 specimens, which dated back from 1882 until the present. However, most of our samples came from 2000 onward until right now. So we do not have many historical specimens, but we still have some that we can make a lot of inference and prediction. Okay, so as you can see here that collections are important, but a lot of people would argue that, well, maybe museum specimens is only important for just public display, show other generation that, well, they are, they used to be this kind of bee, this kind of birds, this kind of plant in the wild in the past, but now they are all gone, okay? But it's not just that the museum specimens are relevant to our current scientific research. A current work with my students looking at the taxonomy of a bee called Thesis has been using the collections or old collections in a very innovative way, which is that the bees in this group are very similar in their color and pattern. And the males and females, we cannot match them to find its species. The males and females of the same species are too diverse, okay? While the female are very look-alike. So how do we solve this problem? Well, we extract the DNA from these specimens, these old specimens, I mean, some are like 90 years old specimens. And then when we got the DNA of this old museum specimen, we amplified the fragments of genes called cytochrome oxidase 1. And then we used these genes to construct a phylogeny of the bees that we found in Thailand. And then we can use this technique to match the males and the females that looks very different. We can separate bees that looks the same, but turn out to be a cryptic species to one another. So as you can see here that there are a lot of benefits from museum's collection. Another important thing that museum's collections can contribute to our current studies of biodiversity is the species distribution models, or SDM. In this picture here, you can see that this is a spider related to the venomous black widow in the genus Latrodectus. As you can see in this picture here, there is some observation points plotted on the map of Eastern United States. With these point of collections, there are information about their ecology. And this ecology can be used by computer using algorithm that can make a prediction of the distribution of this species as a whole. So this is a very unique and neat method to say that, well, where else does Latrodectus variolus distribute? It may be, it may be found in the upper part of the Eastern United States and then lower in the Eastern United States as well. Okay, so beside of information for public health, we can adapt SDM to work on our ecosystem management, especially in a groups of animals that are threatened or near threatened to become extinct. Like in this case, a work on a spider named Sphodros niger was found in Eastern United States as well, and some in the Midwest. They did some prediction that nowadays, the range of this spider might be receded back only to the eastern part of the United States, like in this brown area here. Okay, so what's with all of this SDM and how can we use it for bee distribution? This is very important because if we have the bee locality in Thailand, we can predict their range, how far can they go. We can predict that in the future, if the temperature change according to climate change event, will there going to be receding? Is the population is going to go up north, or the one that's already up north is going to die because the temperature is going up? These are kinds of models that can have benefits from having historical collections to the studies and can predict a lot of things that will happen in the future. Okay, so to gather all of these collections of bees and other pollinator into a museum, into a research facility, to make it more accessible and available for other scientists around the world, one thing that we need to do is that we need to digitization our data. Because if we can make a digitization of our data, a lot of people, other scientists, can have information that can contribute to their research that have effects on the studies of how to preserve the area that we have here for other pollinator. One of the institutions that house public occurrence records is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, or GBIF, which is housed in Denmark in Copenhagen, but have their branch everywhere throughout the world. Currently, they have a records of all living organisms on Earth, about 1,800 million records here. And last year, GBIF has sponsored our lab to assemble a database of bees specimens in Thailand. So what we do right now here is that we have our database of more than 10,000 specimens of bees in Thailand plotted all over in the country. You can look at each country distribution. You can look at each specimen record, and most of the specimen that I provided in this database has picture with at least 4 view, like the frontal, the lateral, and then the dorsal side. So there are pictures as well. You can compare it. You can use it for other kinds of your research. You can access into this website by the DOI that I provided in this picture. It is available and free to every users. You might have to learn a little bit about how to use it later, but this is our first attempt to make this database for bees in Thailand. Maybe in the next couple of months, all of the pictures of every occurrence records will be available for you guys. Okay, so this is the DOI that I want to share it to you if you are interested to look at later. So after working with GBIF, this is our next things that we want to do. We want to link the data in GBIF to a portal in Thailand and written in Thai for researchers and all of the public that who are interested in Thai bee can get an access into it. So right now, we are doing this ฐานข้อมูลตัวอย่างผึ้งในประเทศไทยนะครับ and it's not done yet, but in the future, when we link this data to GBIF, I was hoping that a lot of Thai people would be encouraged, or other people would find it interesting and want to study about bees more in Thailand. So, okay, what do we? So, right now, the ultimate question is that why do we have to do all of this? It's like, why do we have to make a database? Why do we have to do digitizations of bees? Why do we have to look at the ancient DNAs of bees? Well, the thing is, currently in our world, we have a problem with a global biodiversity loss, okay? Like Guillaume stated, that tropical forests support at least 2/3 of the world biodiversity, despite covering less than 10% of Earth land surfaces. Well, the tropical forest here include Thailand, right? We harbor one of the diverse one of the places that harbor diverse biodiversity on Earth. And the problem that we are facing right now, the biggest threat is deforestation and urbanizations. This is like the major culprit that reduce the biodiversity loss in our country or in our regions of the world. Well, if you look in this picture, the current work by Walden et al. In 2017, the global diversity loss assessments is very high, especially in Indonesia, in Malaysia, China, North America, and in Australia. I mean, us here, Thailand is not so much in the color, but I doubt that it has this color. It's not because they are reduced, the diversity are reducing at a slower rate, but I think that's because we don't have a lot of information to assess the current states of our diversity loss. And that is one big scary thing, because we cannot conserve anything that we don't know what they are called or where they are. Okay, and that's include our pollinator as well, because right now we don't know how many we have, where they are, and how we are going to protect them. Okay, So if you are not convinced about the conservation aspect of our work, let me tell you a little bit about economics. Okay, a lot of people likes the money things and wants to know, like, well, what's in it for us to conserve this small pollinator? Well, if you look in the global scales, the estimation consider the benefit of pollination across all sectors, including the indirect effects of meat products, vegetable oils, and fat dairy products. They are all related to pollinations, can cost us more than $195 billion. So if we don't have pollinator, this value might poof, gone. If you look at these graph here by Porter et al. 2020, you can see that there is a lot of related product to pollinations that contribute to this number. As you can see here, Indonesia, which is closest to Thailand, this is the closest that I can find, can produce a product that related to pollinator of 360 million tons per year. Okay, so that's quite a lot of number. And then you look at USA, you look at Brazil, you look at China, and again, you don't have anything to access from Thailand. Okay. And also, if we look into the country scale, you can see that in New Zealand, US, China, India, Brazil, and the UK, these are the value of the product that are affected by pollination service. The number in the red rectangle here is already adjusted for inflation rate in 2021. Here, you can see that pollination can contribute to a lot of economic growth in the country, as this number attests to you. You can see how much it is for India, you can see how much it is for South Africa and other countries. Well, the value from pollination service has increased, and it's going to increase as time goes by from now. What about Thailand? Well, when I look into the custom departments, this is like the most recent one, we don't have any number that related to pollination service in Thailand at all. The most that we got is that, okay, we have value of export honey from honeybees, which, as you can see here, is decreasing as time goes by from 2017 to 2020. I don't know why the number is decreasing. Is it because of the disease, or is it because a lot of beekeepers are not wanting to do their business anymore? Or even the value of export royal jelly is also decreasing as well. Well, we have this number, but at the end, there's no value, or no value estimation of pollination service in Thailand. There has never been an assessment, there's no evaluation how much pollination constitute to the export or the GDP that we have in this country. Well, I guess we have a lot of problem to do, and what should we do from now? Okay, well, the first thing is we really need to concentrate ourselves on the studies, not only the taxonomy of bees in our country, but ecology, molecular biology, and in agriculture, how they affect or how they affect our ecosystems, how they're going to increase the yields of our products. And to be able to do all of these studies, we need a better collections of bees, we need a research facility, and funding and support from the government. I mean, if we don't have these supports, we are not going to be achieving what we want to do. And in the future, we might lose all of the biodiversity that we have without knowing what we had to begin with. Okay, so if we can do that in the future, maybe we can start raising bees that are not only honeybees, but other solitary bees in different kinds of hive that other countries in Europe and America are doing it right now. And then we can use this for the benefits of our tri-crops that we are doing right now without using a lot of manpower. So at this end of this presentation, I just want to thank you everyone for listening, and I hope that a lot of you guys know more about the importance of this forgotten solitary bees pollinator in Thailand. I would like to thank the fundings that I've received so far from GBIF, the National Science and Technology Development Agency in Thailand, the Center of Excellence in Biodiversity at Chulalongkorn University, the Asahi Glass Foundation, and the Graduate School of Chulalongkorn University. Thank you, WWF, the EarthNet Foundation, the Heinrich Boll Foundation, the Go Organics, and GBIF for giving me all of the opportunity to talk here. All of this work cannot be done by myself. I mean, actually, the work here that you have been seeing is mostly done by my students under my guidance. So they are the worker bees that do all the work. And I'm just like a PR, personal relation that's coming out and say about what we are doing in this work. And I hope that in the future, this lab will grow more and can contribute to the studies of bees. I would be more than happy to answer other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I see we already have some questions coming in, so I will start with that if we're ready. We have from Cleo, among the species of solitary bees, which group is most threatened by climate change?
I would say it would be the one that living in the northern part of Thailand, especially up in the mountainous area. These are the bees that require cooler temperature to maintain its physiology. When you say this, the groups of bees that come into my mind first is the bumblebees. Okay, before this year, we think that there are only like 4 or 5 species of bumblebees in northern Thailand, but now with studies from one of my students in England, we found that there are maybe at least 7 species of bumblebees in Thailand. And some of these species can be found at the summit of Doi Intanon, which is pretty high and always have a low temperature all year round. So if the climate change happened early in our generation time here, the problem would cause to these groups of bees principally. These would be the primary group that get affected by.
Thanks so much. Another question here from Dr. Alyssa, who really appreciates your talk. What additional information do you think we need to collect before we can distinguish between and name the different Amygdala species, the blue bees?
Oh, I think right now, what we're trying to do is, I think we're gonna have to get the DNA samples from Amygdala and then doing this same studies with Thyreus and see whether the DNA can give us a good picture about species recognition or not. It's going to take some time and some money to finish this work, but I think in the future, I think this is something that we can do it. And if we can do it, we will be the first team in Asia that can distinguish Amygdala to a specific accurately. And then maybe if we coordinate with China, coordinate with India, coordinate with other ASEAN country, we might be able to do like a mega projects of Amygdala of Asia, because this is a group of bees that are very important for pollination, especially on tomato. And it's sad that the taxonomy is still a big mess on this group. And not to mention that other biology of these bees are really unknown in our area.
Thanks so much. Here I see from RM Sanat. Do nectar robbing increase the overall pollinator visit and pollination? If yes, does nectar robbing by Apis species in alpha enhance the overall population of pollination?
Okay, let me answer the first questions. Well, nectar robbing is frequently observed in nature, but I mean, those mostly happens in the time when there's not a lot of flowers blooming in the area, whereas sometimes the bees were just lazy enough to cut out the corolla by not brushing itself against the anther. And sometimes if we see that in our studies, sometimes we do not count those as pollination activity, because as you know, they are just robbing the nectar. They're not doing a lot of pollination at all. So it's very tricky, because different bees has different ways on different types of flowers of nectar robbing, and we still don't know much about these behavior. I mean, to documented these behavior in nature. So that's the answer to the first questions. Michael, can you repeat the second questions again?
Yeah,
please?
then the question was specifically about alpha. Does
Okay.
nectar robbing by enhance pollination of alpha?
Oh, okay. So what they find out back in the 1970s is that the apis rob the nectar without touching the petal keel of the alfalfa flower very much. So they learn how to avoid touching the petal keel, because if they touch the keel petal, the anther will spring up, the stamen will spring up, and that's for some reason annoyed the bees, and the bees like, we don't like this, like we're gonna find a way and do something else. So it's funny, because there is a lot of studies showing that if the workers are old workers, they are experienced workers, they will be able to rob the nectar. If the bees are not a young worker bees, they're not experienced, they tend to pollinate alfalfa. So it's very tricky in this situation. The bee learns how to not get annoyed by the petal keel.
Okay, thank you so much. I see from Pitipat, are bees related to all ants?
Bee related to all ants? Well, what I'm trying to say here is that bees and ants share a common ancestor a long time ago. And then each group evolved into its own group. Now the ants and the bees. So in one time, in evolutionary time, they share a common ancestor. We don't know what the common ancestor is or are, but at the end, we have bees as a distinct group. We have ants as another distinct group.
Okay, thanks so much. I think you covered this, but Isaraya was asking if there's a bee bank, which it sounds like you're doing at Chulalongkorn. But is that, as far as a gene bank on bee populations for conservation purposes, is that at the center now in Thailand?
Yes. What we're doing right now is we have the most number of bee specimens in the country, and we have the actual specimen house in here in the back of this, in the background of my talk here. And we also have a database of all of the specimens that we house. We have all of the name, we have all the localities, we have down it to like the decimal coordinates in GPS systems, in different metric systems. We have pictures of almost every bees. Well, hopefully in the future. Right now we had about 1/3 of pictures of all of our specimens. And in a couple of years, we will be doing a lot of DNA barcoding of the specimen represented here. So we can have the DNA of every bees we have in Thailand in our system. So that is an ongoing process that we're trying to achieve in the future, because I think that's going to be useful for other pollination biologists or other ecologists that wants to look at bee decline or pollinator decline in the future.
Maybe I just want to add on that, with that, is there a role for like citizen scientists, farmers who are observing bees or different things to somehow support that work in any way? If we're not formal researchers,
Yeah.
can we do
Yes.
that with pictures or samples?
That is a very good question, Michael. Another things that we want to do here is that after we get the database launch, we want to connect our database to iNaturalist. Have you guys ever heard about this website, iNaturalist, that where layman citizen science can take a picture of the pollinator or any organism in the world, and then there would be experts. There will be a curator, like a virtual curator, to say, okay, what this is and what species it is, and mark down where they can find the GPS coordinates of the place. And then after through verification, you can use that data into the database and use it as a verified data point. So in the future, we will include citizen science. We will include iNaturalist, especially iNaturalist, into our picture to get more data about the bees. That's one of the reasons that we want to get the database out as fast as possible, because if we get it out as soon as possible, people will be aware of that, or like they would know that, okay, this bee is called this bee called that. And then whenever in the future, if they came across while they are like trekking in a national park or just going for a casual walk in the park, they see it, they can take a picture and then upload it in a social media platform, and then we can get the data out of there. So let's hope it's going to be accomplished in the future. There's a lot of work to do here.
Okay, that sounds like fun, an area for us to join in on. From Teja from India, with your work of conservation of solitary bees, how are you checking your impact of work, and what strategy are you using?
Very good questions. How do you checking the impact? Well, right now, honestly, I cannot assess anything whether this work has an impact in a broad general public sense, because some of our data are not readily available to everyone in the public. I mean, the database is the first steps to achieve the goal. I mean, not a lot of people knows what our solitary bees are, and that's one of the biggest problem. And what we're trying to achieve here is that we want to raise awareness of the existence of this pollination system in our ecosystem that is very vital, but not a lot of people know about it. And then if we can get the public to be aware of it in the future, I think it's going to be very fruitful in the future, that people would think that, oh, this is going to be important to us. This is something that's a lot of Thai citizens needs to learn about. I mean, it's funny because, I mean, Thailand has a lot of crop produced by pollination, but a lot of them use human to pollinate their crops. And if we can reduce the number of money that we used to hire those people to do other things instead, more job skill occupation, then we can save this money and then we can produce more crops in the future.
Okay, thanks so much. This one, I don't know if I understand entirely, but from Watanayu, can we have other bee conservation for research in other type like bee bioresource or something like bee cell line? Maybe you understand that better. Bee bioresource and bee cell line.
I'm a little bit not sure about the questions here, but if I would say that if we can expand or we can collaborate with other groups of scientists that are interested in bees, but not in ecology, taxonomy, or systematics, but in molecular biology like bee cells line, maybe if that's my interpretation is correct, then I think it's I'm more than welcome to like provide any collaboration or assistance that we can provide.
Okay, here's another question that I was very interested in from, I'm not sure if I pronounced it right, Xuan Yu Chen. I would like to build insect bee hotels that could naturally attract bees or insects. Or should I do something else for attracting them? I think we're looking now at particularly at these solitary bees. What can we do to help create the habitats for them in our?
Okay, two things. The first is, okay, the bee hotel. Recently, it's been a controversy about whether the bee hotels really help conserving the native solitary bee population in a given area, because a lot of skeptics say that it doesn't work that much and it's a waste of time of doing it. But a lot of people would say that it's a good thing to at least have this kind of thing to help us preserve our local biodiversity in the area. The second part, the question is what, Michael?
No, basically, yeah. What we can do. I want to add. I think for many of us, we want to help to restore and support the population.
Yes.
So one option would be like the bee hotel. I saw the bamboo in that
Right,
place.
right.
It says, oh, maybe I should put some bamboo like that. We know that some of the carpenter bees that can do them there. And I was thinking that if you didn't plow, then the ground dwelling bees may be able to survive. Okay. Or what are ways we can help to facilitate habitat?
Yeah. Like I say, the bee hotels might help, might not help. It's still in debates, but a lot of people would do it just for fun, to have it in their backyard. But if you are thinking about pollination service in commercial scale, I mean, a bee hotel might be a good way, because that way you can move the bees to do your job easily, right? Like all the honeybee hive or honeybee colony that we have in Thailand that has been moving around the country. I mean, that could be one thing for commercial and economics. But in terms of conservation, I think the best thing that we should do is habitat conservation, not just habitat for the floral food source of the bees, but for the nesting sites of the bee as well. Because different bees has different nesting preference. Some bees nest on ground, some bees nest on twig, some bees just find a crack in a rock and then live in there. I mean, you don't know what kind of impact deforestation has on the system, because these are something that if you do it, if you urbanize the area, if you make a monocultural farm, it's gonna really affect the number of native bee population in your area. I mean, tremendously. This is like the biggest factor that's contribute to the declining of the pollinator that we have right now.
Okay, thanks so much. Just by the way, we're supposed to end, but I'm happy to go a little bit longer. There's a lot more questions, but it's also up for you, Natapot.
No, I'm happy to.
I think
answer the questions. If
okay, we try to go through all these. It's a lot of interest. It's a really exciting lecture. So I also had this. Somebody found Natita. She's seen the amargillus in her garden, and they move so quickly. Is the speed of them distinguish their species by the speed of movement?
Good
I couldn't get a
questions.
photograph of one sitting still.
Yeah.
Like,
did you know that a lot of pictures of amargilla in the wild, most people took them when they're sleeping on a twig. So they use their mandibles and then clamped it on a twig and then stay right there and then sleep on there. Yeah, amargilla is very interesting in terms of their flight dynamics because they can fly like what is odonata? Dragonfly. Okay, so they can fly like dragonfly. They can stop in midair and then they can go to the direction that they want instantaneously. So we never try to distinguish their species from their flight capability, but their flight dynamic is something that's very interesting in terms of aerodynamic studies. I used to have students in engineer asking me about wanting to study the flight dynamic of amargilla, and I say like, well, we have to have a wind tunnel built, and then we have to catch the bees, and then get the bees fly in the wind tunnel, and that's, I mean, if you have enough money to lay around, we might not be able to do that. It's still something very interesting to study. It's a kind of bees that fly very, very fast. Yeah, I agree with that.
okay, I think you kind of answered this, but they were asking for more opinion. As we saw this rapid decline in honey exports and royal jelly from the slide you have. Do you have an opinion as to why this is going on? Is it climate change? Is it something else? That was kind of surprising statistics.
Yeah, when I first look at this picture, I was stunned as well. But one of the things that I've been talking to local beekeepers around Thailand in the past couple of years is that a lot of them like quit their beekeeping business and just went out to do other kinds of things that's more profitable and less exhausting than beekeeping. I mean, a lot of people here know that beekeeping is not an easy endeavor, right? It's not something like you keep bee in you keep a fish in a fish tank or raising an organisms inside enclosure. Bee will fly out to find other things and then come back to their nest. Sometimes they does not carry only food. Sometimes they carry back pathogens. They carry back parasitic mites and everything into their colony. And to manage them, you need to understand quite a lot about bee biology, basic bee biology. So, and to get, what do you call it? To get a reward out of this endeavor that you put into, sometimes, you know, honey in Thailand are mostly banned from Europe and from America because we don't meet their standards of their honey quality standards. So it's kind of like a trade-off between like, okay, the profit is not looking good at this time, so maybe a lot of people quit. But this is just my guess, my conjecture of why there is a decrease of exporting honey. But it just seems like a lot of beekeepers that I know throughout the years has been quitting beekeeping as their main job and then doing other stuff instead. But the silver lining about this situation is that I have been seeing a lot of stingless beekeeper popping up on social media, quite a number of them in recent year, and they are like, and they looks like they are doing very fine. So I think maybe in the future we will get some more about a lot of people who keeping stingless bee instead of just Apis mellifera honey in Thailand. So I think that's another thing to look forward. I mean, but so far, as I said, there's no value. What do you call estimation of value of all of these things, all of this activity in Thailand. So it's very difficult to say what is going on right now.
Thanks. Dr. Tai from Vietnam asked, do you think honey hunters are a factor in terms of the decrease in the number of pollinators?
Honey hunters in Thailand usually looking for two species primarily, Apis dorsata and Apis florea, or sometimes Andreniformis. So Phung Mim and Phung Luang are the two species that honey hunters are really going after in Thailand. And a lot of them are, what do you call, like, can exploit and destroy a lot of colony at a very fast rate. Again, we do not know what's the status of all of the colony of Apis dorsata and florea in Thailand is at the moment. But if you go and see a local market that has these types of bees for sale, sometimes you would wonder, like, oh, they got like 50 colony of Apis florea for sale, and you're wondering, like, is this going to decimate the whole population in the area? And I mean, nobody knows. There is a possibility that some honey hunters might harvest too much, but we still have to see what it's going to be in the future. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Again, from Sanat, do economic estimation is really a good call for using that as a way for conservation of bees, because most of the estimated economic value is shared by a very small portion of solitary bees. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, it has both eusocial bees and solitary bees in the equation as well. I can give you a number on the value that solitary bee contributes to pollination, that solitary bee contribute to the markets. But I just want to say in a whole that, I mean, if we are facing with the problem of honeybee decline throughout the world, solitary bees pollination will play a major role later in the future because I mean, we can see that they have potential. It's just that it's not very popular right now. That's all.
Okay, next. From Punawit, from your experiences, what was the biggest obstacle to your work? Kind of a big one. I don't know if you have something.
Well, academically, the biggest obstacle is that we don't have basic information about the bees we have in our country. I mean, when I started working on bees in Thailand about 20 years ago, we don't even know anything other than 5 Apis species in Thailand. And comparing to Europe or North America, when we talk to those people, they can like go out in their garden and then point out like, okay, this bee is this bee is that. Or when they go into a field in a tall grass prairie in the middle of Kansas of nowhere, they can just say like, okay, this plant is pollinated by this bee. So the informations are already there. I mean, the older generation of scientists in those countries has already laid a great foundation on the studies. So a lot of people can use that information to step on and then expand their work in pollination biology. That's one of the biggest obstacle we have in Thailand. We have to do everything from the beginning. And I guess if nobody does it, I mean, we're not going to be able to like finish, or we will not be able to advance our work on pollination research. In terms of working environment wise, I think funding is one of the things that we really need, and we need students that are interested in nature and science to come and help us accelerate our research. I mean, we are far behind from many countries, and to catch up with those countries, we really need more people to get involved and contribute to be biology in Thailand. I think that's one of the important things.
Here's one. I think it's related to honey hunting, but maybe it says in some areas there are people eating bee larvae, which I think was only apis or some wasp larvae. But is it also affecting, do people, I don't know if people also eat solitary bee larvae, but it's asking if this affecting bee population in future conversation.
For solitary bees, there's no documented account of people eating the larvae, because in solitary bees, as most as you can find in a single nest, it's not going to be more than 20 offspring inside a nest. So economically speaking, it's not going to be worth it to like go through all that work and get less than 10 or 20 bee larvae to eat. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's not popular. I mean, contrary to, other things, you have apis, you have stingless bees, you have weaver ants and wasps that makes a lot of broods and a lot of youngs in their nests. I mean, collecting those things can give you tons of foods, and I think with people's skill right now, it's much easier. So solitary bee is right now safe from that threat.
Okay, and then we have from Mary Shah. I don't know if this would be also directed towards solitary bees. We've talked more about apis before, but how far do beehives need to be from a house, and which direction should the beehive face if we want to attract bees? Okay. Maybe if we're looking at more of the bee hotels or whatever that you were looking at, or different kinds of alternative.
Okay. Okay. This is like a classic questions of like which side you should place your honeybee colony to. Well, if you talk to a European beekeeper or American beekeeper, they would always say, okay, the entrance of the hive should face east, right? There's a lot of bee books saying something about that, because like it's a direction that the sun goes up in the morning, blah blah blah, and it has to be. It doesn't have to be far from the house, as long as you're not worried that your bees might sting your children, your pets, or anything. But in Thailand, I think this is something that's still puzzling me, because a lot of times I see people facing honey colony out to the east. Turn out that it's too hot for the bee colony, and sometimes they have to move and have to place the entrance of the hive to the north instead, or sometimes to the south. Yeah, it's very. I think for me it's very arbitrarily, because I think beside of sunlight and temperature, we have to take into account with the humidity, the high humidity that we have in our country as well, and that's affect how well the colony going to prosper. Yeah, and all I can saying right now is that, well, maybe not directly into the sunlight early in the morning might be the safest bet, I would say.
Okay, thanks. I think we have one last question, which I'm not sure it's about SDM as a tool for biodiversity assessment. I guess maybe you're using that. And Clay wants to ask how how efficient is this tool? I don't know if that's a tool you're using.
Okay, yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool that we are using right now. What we are trying to do at the present is that we want to see whether if in the future, maybe in 20 years, if the climate temperature is increasing by 1, 2, or 5 centigrades, is that going to affect the distributions of the bees that we have in our country or not? These studies are all model-based. And model-based is as good as the data that it's provide. So the underline here is that you need to make sure that the data that you have are reliable and they are accurately georeferences. So it's kind of like if you have a data point of the bees that you can find in a certain given area, and all you have on the label of that bee is like, okay, Chiang Mai, Marim, like that. And that will be like, okay, Marim is a vast district in Chiang Mai. Which does it come from? Because what the program, the algorithm do is that they will pick up a point, and the ecological factor at that point, it's either temperature, rainfall, photo periods, humidity, so on and so on, and then use those data to evaluate in their models and give you a prediction of what's the distribution going to be. So as I said earlier, if you are just making up the point on the maps and say, okay, it should be found in this area, blah, 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 and then maybe your data is not that accurate. So I mean, the algorithm and the program is available. The difficult part is that you have to find a trusted and well identified and well verified data. It's the quality of the data that can give you a very good resolution of the results that you want to get. So in the future, I mean, there are some statistic methods that can compensate these shortfall, but all in all, it comes down to the quality of the data. And that's something that we really, really, really needs to get our hands on.
Okay, so thanks so much. I think if you want to have any last words for us, Natapot, you can, or anything like that, and then I'd like to pass to Sue from WWF to close it. Any last closing remarks?
No, I just want to say thank you for the WWF, and I hope that in the future, I mean, if we are continue doing this work on pollination, I hope that we can work together, and I can hope that I can work with other people that attending this seminar. We need a lot of people who are interested in pollination, not just bees, but in everything that will help us sustain our ecosystems in the future. It's going to be a long battle. I can see it, and it's not going to be easy. But if we do it slowly but firmly, it's going to give us some good result in the future. I believe that is what is going to happen. So thank you very much.
So thank you, Dr. Natapot, and everyone in this webinar. Here, I so very appreciate that Dr. Natapot have shared the knowledge that very specific and very deep and very establish the base of the knowledge in Thailand about solitary bee, and we hope that we will have a chance to work together in the future. And as I said again, you can go to the APIA Facebook group to join our group that I will share the screen again. In this group, we have exchange the knowledge about pollinator conservation. And you already know, right? If we save pollinator, we can save our life and we can save this world as well. So and the video will update in the WWF YouTube, and we will update within this week or next week, and we will update the video in the APIA Facebook group, and you can follow. And for the next webinar, you can join us and we update again soon. And that's it for today. And you, Michael, have something to say?
No, thanks so much. This has been really wonderful. And yeah, I hope, and we don't have yet a fixed speaker. And so if you're also somebody working with pollinators, we would also welcome you, particularly in this time with COVID. We can't meet in person. I think this is a great way to share knowledge. So please also let us know. I'd very much like to learn more about moths. We haven't had a chance to learn anything about moths or butterflies and pollination. So if there's someone who would like to join in that capacity, and I'm actually talking with somebody I know from Chiang Mai who's an elder beekeeper who's done that for 50 years. And maybe he can speak about the changes, because I think he really understands what's changed in 50 years in terms of that. So some of those questions about maybe why we have fewer exports and what's happening with that and these issues. So thank you so much, and thank also for the interpretation provided today as well. Thank you for your work and effort and all involved. Take care.
So if you have any comment or any recommendation, just contact me, because I'm the one who set this webinar. You can send the email to me via Zoom or via this chat. Okay, so let's close this webinar. Okay, thank you. I have learned a lot as well. Thank you, Dr. Natapot, and thank you, Kun Manchawat, for translation.